You're watching The New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
Zilliz is a leading vector database company offering high-performing and scalable solutions. Powered by Milvus, the popular open-source vector database that helps companies from any scale build AI-powered search solutions.
Hey everyone, another day, another podcast for the New Stack Makers. And today, I am very excited to talk to two members of the Monterey.ai team, Ben Kramer, co-founder and CTO at Monterey, and Cole Hoffer, founding machine learning engineer at Monterey. This podcast is sponsored by Zilliz, the company that Monterey uses for vector embedding, and curious about that. But I wanted to really talk primarily about Monterey and how Monterey uses machine learning. You know, what we often see now is companies starting to think about machine learning and generative AI and all the different capabilities that come with those technologies. But a lot of it is about how to get started now and how do you really start to build something that is relevant to people. And that's what Monterey has done. And so I'm really curious to understand about the team that you've built and the skill sets of the engineers and how the company is scaling out to build its service. So I'm also going to ask some questions about the data that you're collecting, the natural language technologies, and how you use Zilliz, the vector database technology. So let's get started. And, you know, I read a little bit about your 1.0 launch, and I have a quote here that Monterey is a co-pilot that analyzes millions of user voices in seconds. Monterey aggregates user feedback, reviews, bug reports, and support tickets from various social media, CRM, and community channels, then clusters common themes with trends and provides recommendations to supercharge your product development process. So this really wasn't possible until just a short time ago. You know, a lot of that was requiring putting data pipelines together that were actually quite complex to build. Can you tell us about the engineering team you've been building that allows you to build the technology to leapfrog traditional analytic technologies?
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for having us, Alex. Appreciate the great intro. We're really excited to be here, really excited to be working on Monterey AI. You know, it's not just about analyzing user feedback, but about really transforming these customer voice data into actionable insights. And we believe that by connecting customer feedback to the product development process, we can ensure that every team member, whether it's from the front lines of customer support all the way through leadership, are really aligned with their user needs. We see customer feedback as a gold mine of insights that is so often underutilized, and we're here to change that. Now, speaking about the team, you know, we're very early. We've kept the team intentionally very lean, but largely we've just focused on finding engineers who have a real passion for AI-driven product development. You know, the unique aspect about this space, this field, is that it's pretty new to everyone. The space is moving so quickly. So it's really fundamental that everyone is not only a great engineer, but also has a genuine enthusiasm for working with this technology and navigating this like super fast changing landscape.
Maybe Cole, you can talk to me about who is on your team. You know, who are you working with? What are their skill sets?
Yeah, the team is actually just three of us full time right now. So I come from a background of both full stack engineering as well as data, big data products, some AI products. Cole is our founding machine learning engineer. Cole, do you want to give an intro about you and your background?
Yeah, for sure. My background really is using machine learning in interesting applications, I guess, for a better way to say. I did my grad school research on using deep learning to basically to drive quantum computing control, I guess I should say. From there, out of grad school, I worked in AI and healthcare field. Then I came here, obviously working with LLMs. So it's been a diverse kind of set of areas I've worked in, but kind of the driving force has been using AI and deep learning to enable these products.
That's deep stuff, quantum computing. Does quantum computing apply these days to the work that you're doing?
One day it might catch up. The only thing I think right now that overlaps is the difficulty of the problems.
Jeez,
But
yeah, I mean,
maybe in 10 years that might be a different answer.
yeah, it's another world, right? That's a whole new thing.
Exactly.
But so what are some of the, skills that you're increasingly going to need for your team? I'm just thinking about all those companies out there, all those people out there who are trying to build their own teams. I wonder if you have any thoughts or perspectives for them, because a lot of those customers might be coming to you because once they do understand this stuff, they can say, oh, well, this would make sense for me to use Monterey for product development.
Yeah, as far as skills go, I mean, as I mentioned, there's no one out there with like a decade of building applied, LLM based products. There's obviously plenty of people with traditional ML backgrounds, traditional NLP experience, and while that experience is super useful and honestly something we use in our product alongside the latest stuff, it's not the only thing that's important. So what we find is like so much of the technology that needs to be built and applied today is new, ranging from like how you operate these models, the infra you need, how you tune them, and prompt engineering is this whole sort of new field that's emerged in the last few years. So really, I think having excitement and being able to thrive in this environment where there's new advancements happening week after week, new models to try to use and integrate into your pipelines. I think it's really about like solid engineering fundamentals and then the ability to move quick and learn new things.
Mm. So, a lot of your work is about prompt engineering, about natural language and how you query the natural language. And so I'm curious about the people that are using Monterey itself, and what roles do they have and what are they learning about prompt engineering, and how is that kind of fueling your understanding and insights into what you provide?
I think just like folks like us building the products using these models, our users are also learning how to communicate with them, just separated through some application interface. So, as users of tools like ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, we're all learning how to interface with computers in a different way than we did before, where before it was often very manual, lots of configurations and clicking to sort of dig into whatever you're trying to do. Whereas now you can just ask about it. But the way in which you ask about it may have better or worse results depending on, the language you use, how the model responds to that language. So I really feel like everyone is kind of learning based on, each individual model and each individual application, how to best communicate with that system to get the results they want. But it's still tremendously more intuitive than it was before, where you have to do so much manual work. Now you can just really ask what you're looking for, see some results, and maybe tweak your language a little bit to get a better result. So from the beginning of having a chat feature in Monterey to explore the data that we collect, we found that users would ask anything from like typing a few keywords like they might do on Google to typing really rich, commands of how they want their data to be surfaced and analyzed. And our system only did so much in the beginning, and we didn't really offer much guidance. So the user really had to experiment a lot. But we learned from those queries, like what the things users were trying to do, and we used that to tailor how our system responded. And additionally, we also started generating automatically for our users example questions based on their actual data. So the system would look at their recent data, generate some example questions for them. And that acted not only as a way for them to potentially find something new that they might not have known about is in their data, but also give them guidance on how to structure those questions, how to formulate them to get good results.
So, Cole, that's interesting, isn't it? Like the questions about the data itself that you can pose back to the user. Is that a new technique that you've seen emerge? Is that something? Because I mostly just see, a response back from a prompt that I write, not a question.
Right. It's kind of interesting because these LLMs are so powerful, but usually you're just kind of given an empty text box and saying, go ask a question. So I think from our perspective, it was really about like, how do we show the types, like the wide variety of questions you can ask to gain these insights? And then also, as Ben said, like if there's new data there, kind of gives a hint towards the new data. We've seen like example prompts show up in things like kind of like the Chat GPT website interface, for example. I'm not exactly sure if I've seen any kind of dynamic question building, kind of what we've done here, where it's really based on like, say your own workspace or your own history. So we're pretty kind of excited about that feature. And
Products are so complex, today. And once a product gets built, that's just the very start of it. There's all the maintenance that goes into the product development itself, and there's so much requirement to be extremely detailed, right? To be really almost technical in like your in whatever platform you use, be it Asana or Trellis or whatever it is. And so how does your technology, using natural language query capabilities, simplify the product development process?
Allowing users to ask natural questions rather than having to manually, filter data, try and find what's relevant to them and sift through it. The natural questions let them much more quickly get at that data. We serve customers ranging from, customer support all the way through leadership. And, there's varying levels of technical ability. So letting folks just communicate in language gives them a much faster path to get this data that's relevant to what they're looking for. And then that helps them either identify things that they should work on, validate a hypothesis about something they should add to their product, explore issues that they might not have even realized users are complaining about because before Monterey, they had this data spread across so many different sources, or it was sort of stuck in a data warehouse behind a data science team, and there's no easy way to get access to it. So we really try to make that data accessible and easy to explore. And that's how we believe that it helps improve the product development process.
How do vector databases play a role in that? And how did you just how did you decide to come over? How did you decide how to go with Zilliz? Like, well, what I'm just curious about that role that vector databases have and the role of embedding in this idea of retrieval augmentation. Like, what role does it have in your technology architecture?
I think these embeddings and these vector stores really touch a lot of pieces in our product. They are great tools, say, for semantic search. So if you want to search your feedback data, being able to ask about the same thing, different ways and different words, but kind of yield the same responses, through semantic search is really powerful. We use them, say, for our clustering and our theme reports. So if you've ingested 1,000 feedback items over the past week and you want to be able to say, like, what were the top feature requests generated, cluster on those embeddings, title those embeddings as they are, we can really build those reports better. And kind of as you mentioned, the last one is retrieval augmented generation for our LLM prompts. One of the great things kind of about these large language models, especially for whether it be like a chat feature or a kind of a classification task, is we can dynamically bring context into the prompts, either kind of based on what we're trying to classify or kind of what a user's asking through a chat interface. So if somebody's trying to understand if particular feedback items should be, triaged in project A or project B in that workspace, we can bring in other examples that have already been labeled that can help guide them basically to say, like, okay, users in this workspace have already said text that's similar here should be labeled in project B, insert that into the prompt using retrieval augmented generation. And that can really kind of improve the classification for that particular workspace, which is really powerful. And that's all, enabled by, our embeddings in the vector store to retrieve those embeddings based on the prompt or the classification request.
Ben, what would you add to that?
There were really a few reasons when we were exploring the different vector search solutions on the market. A big one was the flexibility that Zilliz and the underlying Milvus technology offer. And that is just the flexibility of so many algorithms for doing these semantic searches that we found important, because going into it, we didn't know which would perform best for our use case. And we didn't want to have to switch from provider to provider or database to database just to try something different. It was important to us to be able to build this into our system and have that flexibility. Additionally, something that was also very important to us is privacy and security. So in many of our customer conversations, they're sending us potentially sensitive customer information, also stuff customers might have submitted through chat support, et cetera. So having data storage that is safely inside of our production private network was very important. And Zilliz was one of the cloud providers that gave us that out of the box. It was super easy to set up. We didn't have to talk to a bunch of teams there. So that was great. And lastly, we went with Zilliz over anything else because it offered a great cloud solution. As mentioned before, we're a very small team. So having to manage infrastructure ourselves is something we try to avoid where we can. So something that meets all of our needs, but still offers that cloud managed solution was really important to us to make that decision.
So I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing about really state-of-the-art classification. And I'm hearing about how you're using Zilliz to embed and vectorize that text-based data to enable the semantic search. What is the state of semantic search right now? I started really getting more interested in when I was at reInvent last week, when I started talking to people about hallucinations, for example. And it's a much different kind of scale of like how we think about hallucinations when you're thinking about it in terms of machine learning. When you're thinking about hallucinations, might be someone who has a psychosis, maybe, or or maybe due to, I don't know, maybe they took too much LSD or whatever, or they just took LSD, whatever, But in the world of machines, it could be as simple as saying, "I don't know," the response to a question, right? Now, in our world, in the human world, when someone says, "I don't know," you don't think that they're hallucinating. You just are like taking them at face value, saying, "Well, all right, you didn't know that," But it implies, so there's a lot of different implications for like how a machine interprets what is being said versus what a human is being said. And so I'm curious on like, how are you like making sure that you're understanding all these outliers, because these outliers will kind of define whether actually people want to use the product or not, I expect. So, and then I'm curious on how that reflects on the state of semantic search. It's kind of an open question, but I just want to kind of help sum things up for kind of where everything's going here in this world that you're really exploring.
That's a good question. I feel like kind of the underlying premise there is like trust is pretty foundational to an LLM-based product. Like the moment you make one really bad hallucination, it's very different, I guess, kind of perspective your customer has on your outputs compared to like traditional products. So having to be, extra safe there is really important. I think the way semantic search in particular helps with these LLM hallucinations is they really provide a framework for trying to ground responses, I think, for a lot of these search cases. So in our case, if somebody, is asking about, say they're the New York Times Games app, and are asking about like, what are the bug reports currently? If you just send that to an LLM or run it through an LLM, there's a lot of potential directions it may go down towards, which, may be hallucinated or not. In our case, if they've ingested that feedback data from, like, say, the app reviews, we can use semantic search paired against the already ingested feedback data using a retrieval augmented generation system, bring those, relevant feedback text in a prompt, and a prompt engineer to say, like, here's relevant feedback to this user question. Now answer the user question using this data. That goes a long way into grounding responses, in reality, where reality is, in our case, like the feedback text we've ingested, rather than just whatever the LLM data was trained on, 2 or 3 years ago, whatever kind of model we're using, et cetera. So I think it's really key in that regard for those search-based approaches, where really constraining the problem or grounding the problem based on like actual text that it exists in our system. And we use, the embeddings in the vector store to be able to bring those into the prompts.
I think something to add there is, given the fact that we do first surface relevant data for anything the user's doing in the system, that also means we might not find data. If they ask about something that, just hasn't been seen in the data we've ingested, we can just tell them that. Or if there's only a few samples that are maybe only so similar, we can just give them back that data and say, like, there's not enough data to really give you a good response here, but here's the data we did find. And even when we do find a lot of data, we do present that to the user first. We tell them, here's the attributes we filtered on. Here's the data set that we produced and are using to actually have this conversation with you. So they can also easily verify, like, is this information relevant? Is it useful? And in those chat responses, we also cite back to those items. So we give the user several mechanisms to verify the data that is being used to write the response and, do their own validation that, this is trustworthy information. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, going back to kind of what your company provides, you provide this capability to, in your words, supercharge your product development process. So the corpus of data that you have has to continually grow. Is that right? But then also the classification has to continue to be optimized, and the semantic search just has to get better. I mean, this must be an architectural challenge that you're probably thinking about every day.
Yeah, scaling is always a concern, especially because we have customers from a wide spectrum of sizes. So, you have small ones who might get hundreds of feedback per week, and then you have large ones who might get thousands even, per day or per week. So very different scales of data for different customers. But it's really important to give them sort of both active and passive ways to explore this data. On the active side, there's, the chat and the searching that we've talked about. On the passive side, we generate automatic weekly summaries and reports and extract the most common trends in their data. That way we can look at the most recent snapshot, but also connect it back over time to what we've seen in the past and let them understand, what has been an ongoing issue for a long time, or what is a brand new issue that might be due to some recent release you've had. And then, obviously on the infrastructure side, there's definitely a lot of scaling concerns of, how do we make this data useful over a long period of time? Definitely something we're always working on, always scaling systems for. But, with tools like Zilliz, we've been able to really trust that it's going to grow with us to, a huge number of vectors to provide these semantic search features that we've talked about.
That's interesting. I guess just my last question is, what are you building? What are you building now that is really kind of important to you in terms of being able to, I think in particular about, triaging this data and providing that rich chat experience, and how you can continue to find those blind spots and establish that trust. I'm curious, just in conclusion, what are some of the things that you're doing to kind of to continue that?
Yeah, something that I'm really excited about that we're working on now is drastically improving how chat experiences can work for the user. So right now it's kind of linear. You ask a question, we find some data, and then we give you a response. We can let you generate some reports based on that data set. But what we found is users often really want to compare things. So we're going to allow them to ask even deeper questions about their data. We're going to automatically understand their query, find multiple parallel data sets, and do all of this together. So we're going to be doing like a number of semantic searches based on their query, putting together these data sets and allowing them to, compare this data, see charts about this data. That way they can understand things like competitive analysis, or if there are issues in one version versus another version of their software, or, when it comes to something like app reviews, maybe there's issues that they're seeing come up on the Android app that they don't see on iOS, or vice versa. So that's one thing we're very excited about.
Well, I guess my final question is, do you think chat's becoming the new software product interface? Is that going to be the standard, do you think, for how software products are built and developed?
I think there's a lot more to most products than what chat can really provide, but I think chat will definitely become one of the primary interfaces with which how people do interact with the software. So we have a lot of different parts of our application that the user can navigate to. They can configure things, filter data. They can do that directly manually, but I think chat is just the sort of entry point that makes it easier to do those actions, to find these capabilities that you might not find otherwise. If you look at any SaaS tools these days, there's so many features and pages and configurations to do that, you might never come across some of them if you don't really know what you're doing. And I think chat is a great way for people to explore and discover things, not only on the data side, but on the capability side. So I think it'll be very important.
I think so too. I think, like Ben said, it is a fantastic entry point to these interfaces. But doesn't necessarily need to be the exit path. It doesn't necessarily always need to be kind of a linear back and forth in the text-based chat. I think you'll see still a lot of these really nice, SaaS tools, whether it's like interactive charts, etc. But I think, like Ben said, it's much simpler to be able to say, type in, tell me about the bug reports between Q1 and Q2. So say build one of those great analysis features, rather than having to build a dashboard manually with drop downs, etc. So I think it'll continue to be a fantastic entry point to these. But I do think we'll move kind of beyond just back and forth text-based responses.
To more kind of like report generated types items where you can then query the reports.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a text-based, engine to generate these different products, where the output doesn't necessarily need to be text itself. So.
Right. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much, Ben, for joining us, and Cole. Good luck with Monterey, and glad to hear your insights. They're very helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Alex.
Thank you.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.